Hey everybody, and welcome to the spoilers review. This is the first one we've ever done for film followers on Star Wars: The Last Jedi. I wanted to do this spoiler review because there's a lot to talk about, and it's hard to tiptoe around some of these topics. So I figured it would just be best to do a spoiler review. I had a non-spoiler review in progress. That I posted last. And you can look at that if you don't want any spoilers. In regards to the score, the final score is pretty close to what I mentioned in the non-spoiler review. That being said, let's just get started. Star Wars: The Last Jedi, when I first watched it, there was a lot to take in. There was a lot that defied the expectations of what I was originally thinking, and that wasn't a bad thing. It also wasn't a good thing at the same time, depending on the circumstance, and it was kind of hard to parse through all of the different thoughts and reactions I was having. There were definitely moments that were very like, this is amazing. There are other moments where I'm not quite sure. And yeah, let's get into the big bulk of everything. And I'll just start off with let's get my con feelings out of the way up front. Star Wars: The Last Jedi is not perfect, and so I think this is something that a lot of people need to take into consideration. That I don't think there has been a perfect Star Wars movie. They've all had flaws in lots of different reasons. Even the originals, ladies and gentlemen. They're not these masterclass movies that are better than everything else that's existed. They're good movies, but they have their problems. And I think a lot of people hold the original trilogy to such a high mark, and they have the nostalgia from seeing it when they were kids or when, way back when, that they kind of don't have the right perspective anymore to respect when someone comes in and says, I want to go off the beaten path. And that's what Rian Johnson does, the director, does a lot in this film. There's just a lot of things that don't go the way you expect. Luke being one of them. Luke Skywalker, because of what happened to his Jedi Order he was trying to train, and because of essentially him kind of causing its downfall, it creates someone who isn't the Luke Skywalker you remember. And I'm okay with that because with where the story goes, it created a very interesting Luke. He was a character who he had a lot of regret, and again, one last time before I get really deep into this is full spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie, sorry, but that's what's coming. Luke, for a brief moment of time, thinks of killing Ben Solo, Kylo Ren. And this is a big crux of what creates Kylo Ren and creates the situation that everyone's in. And it's all based on some split-second thought. A rash thought that leads to all of this, and it breaks Luke. It breaks him completely. He is destroyed because he had one faulty second that he failed, and because of that, it caused a whole bunch of problems. And to say that wouldn't crack someone and cause them to want to be a hermit. To want to be left alone, to die alone, and just not be a part of anything anymore is crazy. Because that is quite literally probably one of the few reactions you would have in a situation like that. And so from that, where Luke is and what Mark Hamill does with the character in this movie, it's easily the best performance for Luke. I don't know if you guys remember the original trilogy, but I think most people were more a fan of Han. Harrison Ford's portrayal of Han Solo than they were of, Boy Scout Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill, which is nothing against Mark Hamill, it's just that's who the character was. In this film, Luke has depth, has real pain, and has a lot more to show, a greater range of conflict. And it's very interesting. The fact that he wants the Jedi to end, it comes from a place of he's seen everything get really screwed up, and he realizes that there are flaws to how things have worked. And I guess what he doesn't seem to understand is he wants the Jedi to end, but at the same time, it's more, he just doesn't have the way of thinking anymore of, well, I can change the way it works. He was very much stuck in the mentality that this is what a Jedi means, and because this is what it means, they shouldn't be around anymore. And so yeah, he's a pretty dark guy. He doesn't want anything to do with any of this stuff that's going on. And I had a feeling he was going to be a little out of sorts based on what we knew from the last film. And for me, I didn't find this shocking at all. I just found some of the things that occurred a little shocking, but it worked. It worked for his character and what he goes through. And we'll go back to him in a little bit while. And you know what? I realized I was going to talk about cons first, and I started talking about Luke and how I liked it. So yeah, let's back that up a bit. Let's go into the spoilers of the cons here. There are a couple plot lines that feel like they could have done them differently. I don't know how, but just in a way that might have. I mean, in the context of if you really think about it, there's always a million plot holes in all movies. But if you think about it in the structure of the story and the character growth, yes, some of these plots were, they were necessary to get to their endpoints, but I just wish there was a different way they could have done it. The biggest one that I had a problem with was the Finn and Rose storyline. Rose is a new character that's been added in this movie. She's kind of almost like a forced love interest for Finn towards the end, but just another companion to the group. And I liked her. She was a good character. There's no problems with her. I see her motivations, all good and all. It's just the situation that the two of them were thrown in was... there had to have been a better way. In context of the movie, the majority of the movie is taking place over a very short period of time because the First Order is slowly chasing down the last resistance ships and waiting for their fuel to run out. And so they have to, Finn and Poe and Rose and all of them need to come up with some sort of way to try and save the day, because they don't know what the real plan is, because the leaders of the resistance that are left aren't divulging what the plans are, and so they think that they're screwed, so they need to come up with a better way. And so there's supposed to be this real sense of urgency, and they get thrown into this weird, they need to go to some other place plot that forces them to go to a place that would have been interesting, but because they had to rush through it, it wasn't as interesting. The first bit of it not being interesting, of being on the Canto Bight, it's like a casino, was that you only got to see it for a little bit, and immediately it's painted at first you're like, oh, this is kind of neat, and then Rose is like, this place is evil because it's full of a bunch of rich snobs, and it's like, well, go to any big casino, it's probably going to be the case. And so it dampers the beauty look of it all, and then you're not even there that long, because very quickly they fail in their task of finding this guy that's going to help them break into Snoke's ship, really quickly. And then they're just in some cells for almost no time at all, and they're very quickly in horse stables with these new creatures that the CGI kind of works at some point and kind of doesn't. And then it starts to devolve into almost like an episode 1 prequel-ish territory with some of the stuff that you're seeing. It's just a little all over the place. Kind of almost a little bit of Ewok-iness from Return of the Jedi, where, all it took to really rip this place to shreds was just, get these animals out and let them do whatever they want. And I don't know if this was just me, but when I was watching the movie, some of the exterior shots of Canto Bight reminded me a lot of Naboo from Episode 1. Just the way the buildings looked, and it just had that kind of look. If it was like, this is a casino on Naboo, I would have been like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense. But yeah, that whole plot just, there were just a lot of sections of it that weren't that interesting, and it felt like they just had to have something for them to do. Poe also kind of gets thrown into a situation where he's not really doing too much interesting things. The beginning, he has some great scenes, and I don't have a problem with the arcs that these characters went through. For example, right now I'm talking about Poe. He goes from this stage of very much still focused on the only way to solve a problem is I need to be in action and do something about it. And doing something about it meaning aggressively moving forward and blowing something up, going out into ship and making some sort of plan, versus what he needs to become, because the Resistance is pretty much nothing anymore, is a leader who understands that sometimes it's not about trying to be a hero, it's trying to be someone who sees a bigger picture and how to keep things going. And he finds that at the end. And I can imagine some people won't like that as much, that plot line, but I didn't mind that one too much. I liked the conflict and the wheels turning in his head eventually, figuring out, okay, this is the direction I have to go in. And so that was some stuff I wasn't too much a fan of. The other thing that I'm still kind of hit or miss on, there's a scene earlier towards the movie where the Resistance ship gets hit, and huge explosion, and all of the leadership of the Resistance gets flung out into space. And you immediately think, wow, they already killed Leia. That's really crazy. Didn't think that was going to happen, especially so early, let alone it happening at all. And then this sequence comes up. People are loving her. Well, I don't think anyone can honestly say that they love this scene. I'm sure everyone's probably has the same feeling of, well, I wish they could have done it differently, but I'm accepting of it, or I completely hated it. I'm kind of on the, I wish they did it differently, but I guess I'm okay with it. And that's when Leia's floating out in space. She does this weird, almost like force magnet, like she floats her way back to the ship, and she's in the middle of the dead of space, so she should be dead, but she's such a powerful force user that she's able to do this. And it's not really explained how much control she has of this, because if she's that good with the force anyways, I don't see why there would be any concern from Rey to needing Luke to train her. She could have just had Leia train her. Because she seems to be doing just fine. She can survive dying in space, and she can blow down doors, so, that's a good starting point. I guess she doesn't have all of the things figured out. That's always been something I've wondered about now in this period of Star Wars, why didn't Luke train Leia more? Or is Leia's powers just reactionary, like just really quick emotional based, and she doesn't really have too much strength on it? It's always been a weird subject, and we're obviously never getting that answer. But yeah, that sequence is just strange. And in terms of things I didn't like, those are the two big ones. I know some people might not like the creatures called the Porgs. Those little, bird penguin-y things. I thought they were great. I thought they were good comedic relief. I think they were the comedic relief that BB-8 was in the original in The Force Awakens. Which BB-8 as well, he's in it. He does some stuff. Yeah, I guess there was one other thing that was kind of weird. Towards the end of the movie, BB-8 takes control of, I believe it's AT-ST, one of the small two-legged walkers. And that's kind of weird. But, yeah, it happened. But yeah. So these are things I didn't like about it. And you could make arguments that there's plot hold points and very confusing. Why didn't the First Order just get a couple more ships to cut them off from the other side? Doesn't really make sense to me either. That being said, none of those things really completely destroyed the movie for me. They do lower the score a little bit overall, but it's not like oh man, this is the worst thing ever. Um, because what's left is everything else, and everything else is really good. I mean, even with these things that were happening, all the actors did a great job, and I enjoyed watching them. Um, Even if the situations were kind of a little weird, or just strangely paced. But the heart of this movie is Luke, Rey, and Kylo Ren. And what you see in this movie is amazing. I think this is the most interesting tale of two people, two apprentices, trainees, the relationship to a head parental master figure, and the relationship between the two of them. There's a lot of interesting things that happen with all of this. Kylo Ren and Rey, they're Force talking to each other, which we find out was because of Snoke, which I think now is kind of like there was always a little bit of that connection, but it was nowhere near as powerful as when Snoke was doing it, but it's still always going to be there type thing. That you see these parallels of these two people who are easily very lost and not sure where they fit in everything, and just want someone they can relate to, and they just have all these little problems, and it's just interesting having them go back and forth. And at first she's just very much, you killed Han, I hate you, to I'm not your friend, but I understand you, and I want to help you. And at the other end, you have Kylo, who he went through a lot of. I mean, essentially everyone who's ever been this figure that he's supposed to look up to has mistreated him in some way, and you have to understand that from his point of view, anyone who's ever been a leader or an authority figure to him has misled him or did something either with the best of intentions or the wrong intentions that hurt him. So you gotta see that by the end of this movie, he very much is he never was wavering from his convinced feeling that everything before needs to come to an end because it only leads to bad things, because that's been his experience. And so his character, I think he's been the most interesting character throughout this series so far of the new trilogy, and I still think that's true. I cannot wait to see what he's doing in episode 9. And Rey's journey is getting much more interesting as well, where she's finally having confidence of staking her claim of who she is, versus being someone who just, the first movie, she's very, even in this movie, she's points of where people ask about her past, and she's just like, I'm no one, I'm from nowhere, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's not true. She is someone. She was from somewhere, and she's taking more ownership over that throughout the events of this movie. So she has some great character moments, and both Kylo and Rey's relationships and reactions with Luke are very interesting. And so that leads to what I think is the highlight of the movie, the best sequence that I think I've ever seen of any Star Wars movie, is the throne room in this movie. So Rey eventually ends up going to Supreme Leader Snoke's main ship to try and save Kylo, to turn Ben Solo back to the light. And it kind of seems like it's going to go the way of Return of the Jedi, where, he's bringing her up in the elevator to meet Snoke, and she's saying, you don't have to do this, I know there's fight in you and all this stuff. And then, he brings her in there and he's like, I'm just going to chill here and not do anything. And you're like, wow, this is... A lot of people were thinking, oh, I didn't like Force Awakens as much because it was A New Hope, and this one is very much Return of the Jedi at this point. And then Kylo kills Snoke, and things take the massive turn. First, you kill off this character who's supposed to be the overarching evil, and the reality is, he's not. And I think this probably makes some people mad. Me, I'm perfectly fine with it, because I've already seen the original trilogy, and I don't need another story of a super overarching bad guy and Especially, I don't need to know every detail about him. I know a lot of people wanted to know some secret, who is he in all this? Well, it doesn't matter who he was, because at the end of the day, he doesn't have the final say in where things are going to go. He was just a terrible guy, a terrible monster, who was cut in half and dead. And as soon as that happens, it leads to these just gorgeous shots and action sequences with Kylo and Rey working together to fight off the Supreme Leader Snoke's guards. And they all have interesting weapons. They're like the red-dressed samurai-looking dudes. And just all of the things that happen, that is amazing. Both times I've seen the movie, as soon as that scene happens, everyone loses it. And it's just, it puts a good smile on your face. And this in my mind is the hallmark of like the height of awesome lightsaber action sequences in any Star Wars movie ever. And it's awesome. I could see that thing over and over again. And then when all of that ends, towards the end of this sequence, while this battle is happening on the outside, the Resistance ships are getting picked off like crazy now. And I don't know if she was Vice Admiral or Admiral at this point, Holdo. She was the one who was in charge of the Resistance while Leia was under a coma after her floating in space incident. She sees this is happening, and she's still in the main Resistance ship, and she flips it around and light speeds it through the First Order's fleet. And there's just this one shot that I swear if this isn't made into a nice graphic artwork that can be put on a canvas painting, it's madness if it never happens, because it needs to, because it looks amazing. It's this beautiful epic shot of just this light tear through everything. It looks so great. The sound just dies, and everyone's like, oh my god, what just happened? Part of you's like, ooh, because Finn and Rose are on that ship as well. Are they still alive? Is it anyone? And it was crazy. It was a pretty epic moment to see. And in my head, while I'm watching the movie the first time, I'm going, oh my god, this movie can't be over yet, because I remember there's a couple scenes that I remember seeing in the trailers that looked like Hoth, and that's this planet called Crate that the Resistance ships were going to. So this isn't even the end of the movie. It's not even the full climax of the movie. It's like the thing about this movie is it kind of feels like it's a movie and a half. There's some resolution. This crazy thing happens here where it could have been like, oh, okay, the movie's going to end here, the next one picks up after this. But no, it's this big set piece happens, and then more is going to happen after that. And then we get to Crate, where there's more awesome looking visuals of the ski speeders, or whatever they're called, the really dinky, like they look like T's when they're on their little flying things. They're on this planet that has a whole bunch of salt, and when they kick it up, the ground there is red. And it just, again, it makes for really amazing visuals. It's really fun to look at. And it's essentially a last stand for the Resistance, and you think that they're screwed. And then Luke shows up again, and you get to see the Luke Skywalker that everyone's always wanted to see. It's the Luke Skywalker that's not a disheveled mess who's not confident in himself. It's the Luke Skywalker who is the Jedi Master that we've all wanted to see in action. He's clean. He's mostly clean cut. He still has a kind of a beard going on, but he's ready to roll. He's ready to fight, and he does a much better Obi-Wan stall moment than Obi-Wan ever did, because he pretty much stalls the First Order from completely crushing everyone and letting everyone else escape while he stays behind to try and hold them off. And at the end of it, you see, he's having this lightsaber fight with the Kylo, which isn't really a fight because he's just dodging the whole time. And when you see it the first time, you're not really paying attention to some subtle clues, but towards the end of the scene, you find out that he was never there to begin with. He was just projecting himself all the way from Act 2, or whatever the name of that planet is, where he's been the entire time. Because he didn't leave with Rey, he stayed there when Rey left to go find Kylo. And he's in a trance, and he is projecting himself down there. And when you watch it a second time, you notice all the clues of like, oh, he's not making any marks in the ground. He's never touching anything, anything of Kylo. So there's no way to like not notice that he's not there. And it makes a lot of sense why he doesn't die when he gets shot by about 1 billion energy blasts from all the different weapons that are fired at him. And yeah, so then you find out that he hasn't been there the whole time, and so you're concerned of, oh my, they're gonna kill him just like they did Obi-Wan. You're like, no, he's gonna be fine. He's gonna be the next one. And then immediately, like a minute after that, he becomes, I guess, one with the Force. He just fades away because it was just so stressful for him to do that. And in my mind, I was a little bit of a bummer of that he wasn't going to be around. Well, I mean, he probably will be as a Force ghost, but I was hoping that he would still be a player in the living physical world for the next one. And he's not, which kind of sucks, but the way he went out, I think, was very satisfying. Much more satisfying than, if Obi-Wan was a big character. Like, if we had seen the prequels before we saw A New Hope, and Obi-Wan just goes, I'm just going to stand here. Like, that would make me kind of mad. This one felt more earned to his character, especially the last thing he does is he's watching two suns setting, which is pretty awesome. And yeah, those, the way it ends with the Resistance pretty much being destroyed. Kylo Ren is now Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, but a good chunk of their fleet just got ripped into shreds. So they're kind of, I'm sure they're still super powered and they have a lot of resources, but they kind of need a little time to refocus. And yeah, the group is kind of, they're focused on rebuilding and starting over again. So I'll be interested to see how long of a time gap is between this one, Episode 8, Last Jedi, and Episode 9. I hope it's several years to give, because if not, they literally are pretty much down to nothing. They have no ships anymore. They had the Millennium Falcon. So they really need to start building up their forces again and getting a large group together. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But how it ends, the actual movie, it could have just ended with them on the ship. But instead it ends on a shot back on that casino planet, Canto Bight, showing a stable boy using the Force, and he's looking to the stars, and he has a little broom that he's pretending is a lightsaber, and it's a great shot because it kind of represents what this movie's all about, and it's kind of throwing a big thing towards all the fans who have been kind of obsessive on wanting everything to be towards Skywalker, Solo, Kenobi, just some big names as being, they have to be a part of this lineage to be important. And, you find out in this movie that Rey's parents, this is still debatable if Rey's parents are or are not what they say they are in this movie, but they say in this movie that her parents are nobodies. And she accepts it, and she deals with that and moves on. And what you're seeing as well with this kid in the ending shot is he obviously doesn't have any parents around. They probably didn't, he's an orphan, so he's a nobody. But the idea being that you don't have to be somebody. Finn, his character has turned into this more heroic figure of being a nobody that was picked up and put into the First Order. He was a First Order janitor that now does things that have bigger impact. And it's painting this picture that I think is both good for this series and just for general, of showing that you don't have to be born into something. You don't have to be important from birth. That your beginnings do not determine your ending. And I think that's really awesome. I think that paints a really cool picture, and it has a much stronger message. Most Star Wars movies I don't feel have bigger messages than good versus evil, and this one was talking about morality between good and bad, all over the place. And in the end, it also brings up this other piece that's about privileged people. Being born in a privilege doesn't mean that you're going to end up being good or doing the right thing. You may end up doing a lot of terrible things. And it also doesn't mean that you are going to change the world. You might just be the obstacle of someone who wasn't of such high up beginnings that is going to change things. And I think in times like this, where there's just a lot of uncertainty about a lot of things going on in the world, and a lot of people of privilege and power are the ones that make decisions for everything, that things can look a little hopeless to others. And this movie's not subtly but really upfront is saying that good people who can change the world for the better could be someone who was born homeless, who was born an orphan, born with nothing. And it's about your choices and what you decide to strive towards that will lead to something. And I think that is great. And so yeah, there's a lot of good messages. The music, the score was super amazing as usual. John Williams doing it again. Visuals were good. Special effects were great. Like I said, there were some. So overall, the movie has a couple weird plot lines, kind of go to some strange places. So there's some lows in this movie that are kind of remind me a little bit of the prequel-ish stuff, and some of the stuff I didn't like about the original trilogy. But then there's a lot of highs. Some of them I think that are the best of the series. And so with that in mind, I think I can confidently say I would give this movie an 8 out of 10. I think that it has some issues, but it's definitely the first Star Wars movie in forever that is trying to tell you things, trying to teach you things, and is trying to defy conventions to try and let this franchise spread its wings to go to greater places, rather than just being a recycle over and over again. It has some of that stuff in there, but it remixes it in the right ways, and also it adds new things, and cuts away a lot of stuff that would have made it just continuing to be what it used to be. I definitely like the movie. I'm probably going to see it another time or two. And that is my spoiler review, long review of Star Wars The Last Jedi. If you like this review, give it a thumbs up. And I also want to know what you guys think about this movie. I've been paying a little bit of attention, and there is a lot of debate on what people's thoughts are. Some people absolutely hate this movie. Some people think it's the greatest thing ever. I think it's definitely... The interesting thing is I do enjoy it a lot. I feel like Force Awakens was a more clean-cut feeling of there wasn't any too big moments of, ooh, this is kind of not right. It was safe, so that's what it did. This movie's not safe. It takes risks, and some of them fail, but the ones that don't pay off in ways that the others haven't done before. Leave your comments. Let me know what you think. You can leave them in the comment section below. You can hit me up on Twitter or email. It's going to be also, those tags will be in the description below. And subscribe to the channel to see more reviews. I think I'm aiming to get one on The Shape of Water soon, so we'll see how that goes. The end of the year's almost up, so I'm also going to have my top 10 favorite movies of the year. And I hope you guys had a chance to see this movie, and if not, check it out when you can, because definitely a movie worth seeing in theaters just for the spectacle alone. Alright, you guys have a good rest of your weekend, which is almost over, so have a good next week. Enjoy the holidays and see a lot of movies. Alright, see you guys later.